Those lyrics do not make any sense. Don't forget, Michael Jackson should sell more records than the Eagles. Is Michael McDonald the best? Is AC/DC a better band with the new Olivia Rodrigo? Really? Nothing beats a good pair of shoes. Michael Jackson should sell more records. The facts of life. Guys, quiet down. This is Matt from the X Radio X podcast. Thank you for joining Jeff, a.k.a. Podcast Father, on this journey, sharing great things content creators are doing. He is the indie podcaster.
You've been searching for a podcast. Want to know about some great artists? You've come to the right place. Indie Podcaster with your host, the Podcast Father.
All right. Yeah. Welcome to another week and another episode of Indie Podcaster. I'm Jeff, a.k.a. Podcast Father. I'm excited to be joining you today. We've got some good stuff waiting for you. I'm going to be sharing a conversation I had with Roberta Blevins. This is actually pretty cool because there was an Amazon Prime exclusive documentary, LuLaRich, just came out a few months ago. Really popular, all surrounding the, I'm going to say scandal because it's all a scandal, but LuLaRich, the multi-level marketing business that saw great heights in the last 10, 15 years, then took a great fall. Roberta was one of the first people to take it out, and really drive it in a public manner and get this business exposed for what it was doing. She's featured on this documentary, obviously in a large role, and more importantly, she's really has taken this negative impact that's happened to her and used it to better her life and to help others. She's a major anti-MLM advocate, and she actually started a podcast, Life After MLM, to kind of connect with that community and all the other people that have been impacted by multi-level marketing and all the negative things that it can do. The crazy thing is, and we talk about this in this conversation, I had watched this, I think it's a 3-part series with my wife, and I kid you not, the day after I finished it, Roberta followed me on Twitter, and I was like, oh my God, that's Roberta from the documentary that we just watched. So it's kind of like crazy how it all timed out, and I reached out to her right away, and we got connected to do this interview, but this is a really cool conversation about multi-level marketing and her podcasting journey so far. She has a really cool story, and obviously has found success in podcasting, but yet still is looking to improve, get past a lot of the things that we all struggle with. So relax, kick back, enjoy this conversation. But before we get to that, I got to take care of that little housekeeping stuff. I call it the business. Seriously, this podcast would not exist if it wasn't for the awesome love that you guys show me in the content creator community. If you're not in contact with me and you would like to be, or you'd like to be featured on this podcast, you can go about this in a couple different ways. If you just want to chat with me, hit me up on Twitter at podcast_father. Hit up my website, podcastfather.com. There you will also find a form that you can fill out to be featured on this very podcast. If you really love what I'm doing, I just would love it if you subscribe to this podcast. If you'd hit up some of the Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, PayPal options at podcastfather.com. You can leave me a review on your favorite podcast listening platform. I'd be thankful. I'd love you. I'd appreciate it. I'm going to share some sponsors with you. They do help me keep making this podcast, but more importantly, these are great tools that independent podcasters should be using. Podpage. You can build a beautiful podcast website literally in less than 5 minutes, guys. It's amazing. It uses your RSS feed and it automatically creates all of this. You can customize it and do all the different things you want to do. There's all sorts of different packages. You've got to have a website if you're a podcaster or content creator. You have to. Go to podpage.com, use my code FATHER. This will get you $20 off any pro package. One of the big challenges for new podcasters is marketing your podcast. Do you need help doing that? Well, I've got the solution for you. My friends at PodSpike make marketing your podcast easy, affordable, and effective. They work with you. They pull the legwork. They connect you with all these different resources that you get to choose from. Go to podspike.com, use the code IndiePodcaster. You'll get $20 off your first month of a pro membership. As a podcaster, it's very important to make sure you got a transcript going on for all your episodes. It really is. And my friends at Podden have the ultimate tools to do that. Make your podcast to eye-catching transcript with ease. You really need to get to it. Go to podden.io. All right, let's get into this conversation, which happens to be powered by Riverside.fm. Roberta, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. You are becoming a world-famous celebrity now, right?
Hardly, but I appreciate that.
Well, I'll let you introduce yourself, but I'll give a little bit of a segue into it here. You were involved with LuLaRich, and of course, the huge fallout there. And you were part of the Amazon Prime exclusive documentary, LuLaRich. You had started the podcast before that came out, but certainly your podcast is a little bit more listened to since then, I'm sure. But the floor is yours to introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like you said, I was in LuLaRich. My name is Roberta Blevins. If you've seen the film, I am the, oh my God, I was in a cult, or the dead fart leggings girl. That's me. I'm an anti-MLM advocate. I've been speaking out against not only LuLaRich, but the entire structure of multi-level marketing for the last 4 years. And I have a podcast called Life After MLM that I started this year in February.
We were talking about how we actually came in contact. This is actually crazy because my wife and I watched this documentary. We finished it. And the very next day you followed me on Twitter. I followed you back, and that's how we got connected here. But literally the very next day, you're like, what are the odds of that, right?
Yeah, it was really weird because I actually had an old Twitter that I don't really use anymore. And so when we were talking about doing a watch party and doing the press and the promotion for the film, Amazon was like, you should probably get a Twitter. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. So I got a Twitter. Not that I don't like Twitter. I was just like, oh no, another social media thing to manage. And I got a Twitter, and I put in that I was a podcaster and I like podcasting and crime and stuff like that. And it suggested you. And I was like, yeah, okay, that works. And I followed you. And then here we are today. So it was all very serendipitous.
It's just crazy how it happened.
Thank you, Amazon.
Yeah, thank you, Amazon. Thank you very much. So this documentary and your backstory here, you got involved with LuLaRich. It's an MLM, just like you said, but at the surface value, it really just seems like you're making a purchase of something in bulk and you're selling it.
Yeah.
It was really big, and like it was just kind of like a trend almost, and people were making really good money.
Yeah, it's mom culture cool, though. It's not like real cool. It was like mom culture cool and like stay-at-home mom culture cool, which is fine. I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, and it fit into what I was doing, and it fit into the comfortable style that I had when my daughter was young, and we like to match each other, and they had that too. And, you know, I was familiar with MLM, but I wasn't familiar with MLM like I am now. Hindsight's 2020. And it really did. It looked like, hey, they're just my wholesaler. They're going to provide me a product at this price, and then I'm going to sell it for this price. It was like flying off the shelves. I couldn't find anything like that I wanted because it was always sold out. Every party I went to, like, things were selling out so fast, and it just seemed like if I was going to do this, now is the time. It didn't seem nefarious. Even I Googled, like, is LuLaRich a scam? I remember, is LuLaRich a pyramid scheme? Like, I was on the right track, but there wasn't anybody out there speaking out against LuLaRich like we are now. So when I searched for those things, there was nothing there. And I was like, I don't know. I did my research. It looks good to me. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. I admit that now. But back then, you know, I wasn't educated. And the only people that were giving me information about LuLaRich were in LuLaRich. And I missed that red flag too.
I mean, I went to school for business, but interesting backstory. My friend got burnt by one of these MLM. It was called, what was it called? Primerica, something like that. I don't know.
Yep.
But I think that might be what it was. It's been forever now. Sound right to you? Heard of them maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. But the part of how they can hook you is it does have like a larger in life, like cool, like a theme to it, but it also has this down to earth, like small knit community feeling for a business. That's a big hook, right? Because it feels like a family.
Right. But what it actually is a cult.
You are the cult girl.
It is. It really is. It's what it is a cult. It looks like a family. It looks like a business. You think, wow, I found my place. This is the thing I've been asking for, praying for, hoping for, looking for. You know, MLMs come into your life when you're vulnerable. That's when you sign on the dotted line. Nobody that is incredibly happy and secure and has everything they ever need is like, I think I'm going to join a pyramid scheme too. Like, people are vulnerable when they join these things. It's really all you need. So you get sucked in and you think this is the answer to my prayers. This is going to solve all my problems. And what happens is you innocuously join a cult who will take you for everything that you will let them have.
This podcast is by no means going to be like about LuLaRich, but But there are people listening that will be listening that don't know what the hell we're even talking about. So I do want to get them through the events in a brief way, but what happened exactly. So you had to put some money down to get into this.
Yeah. When you join any MLM, you'd have to put money down. Mostly you're going to see like $99 to like $499. That's under $500 is sort of like the FTC's threshold for a scam. So most MLMs are going to be in the $499 or under range. But LuLaRich was a buy-in of $5,000. Mm-hmm. And then there was like a secondary package that was like $7,500. And then there was like a $9,000 package as well. Again, you would think that would be a red flag, but for me, it was like, wow, not everybody would join a $5,000 company the way they would join a $99 company. So for me, it felt more like an exclusivity thing. Only people who were serious, quote unquote. So like cringy to even say now, but even people who were serious about the business would be interested in putting $5,000 down. So those sort of even were there to like calm my fears of oversaturation, calm my fears of, like people just kidnapping, which is a term in MLM where you only join to get the free product. That high buy-in, though people are like, why would you spend that much? They had an answer for every single, why would I spend that much question you could ask them. And again, when you're only getting your information from inside the organization, everything they're going to give you is literally just going to lead you to get you to join.
Because it targeted you directly and then your fellow stay-at-home.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, you can just stay home. It's so easy. The clothes come to your house. You sell them on Facebook. You have people come over, your neighbors come over and buy them right out of the box in your living room. So easy. You make 50% plus on everything because there's this, like the markup. It's so easy. And I was like, I could do this. This is so easy. Let's go. And I did. I did really well. I did really well in the company.
$5,000. How much did you have to buy? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I bought the biggest package. So I spent close to $9,000 to join LuLaRich.
And that includes the first batch of product?
Yeah, that was the first batch of product. It was like 7 boxes. It showed up on my door. It's like 7 boxes. There were no leggings. They're out of leggings. I had to purchase leggings like in Facebook groups. I had to ask consultants like, hey, does anybody have any leggings that you can let me buy? Because LuLaRich's out and I'm launching my business next week and I need leggings. So I was buying 4 or 5 pairs from this person in Minnesota and 4 or 5 pairs from this person in Florida. And they're all shipping it to me so that I could have leggings to launch my leggings business. I mean, it was absurd. That was another red flag that I should have been like, I'm just sending this back, return to sender. But again, I already had invested in my mind so much of my own emotion, time, thought, feeling, because they started grooming me in October. And here I am in March getting these boxes. So I had so much of my own, we call it sunk cost fallacy, and you can put it to emotion as well. But when you've put so much time and energy or spent so much money on something that you're like, I can't quit now. Like I've invested so much. And so at that point, you're like, okay, well, I haven't even started. Let's at least give it something, let's at least try. And I hit the ground running.
You got to have like victories early on. And to me, the timeline was perfect with the development of what you're capable of doing on social media. An example would be like you talked about Facebook. People were just going live on various different things and just selling this stuff like crazy. So it also timed out perfect with where pop culture and then the social media world was.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in LuLaRich, Periscope was the thing. That was like Twitter's version of like going live. And very quickly, Facebook Live showed up on the scene and took over. And this whole like, I run my own QVC show out of my guest room, LuLaRich show happened. And then it sort of swept through all of MLM. And you couldn't escape scrolling through your social feed. And there's someone selling something on a live video. It was obnoxious and it just took off.
There was a caveat, or not even really a caveat, another way through MLM that people were making money.
Yeah. So the main way to make money in an MLM is through recruitment, the same way as a pyramid scheme. You don't make a lot of money in sales. You just don't. You don't. In fact, only 10% of MLM sales actually make it outside of the MLM.
Because you'd have to sell such a substantial amount.
Right. You basically just sell it to each other. Or you buy it for yourself as a sale. There's a lot of MLMs that encourage you to have ghost accounts. So you'll have your like distributor account and then you can have one more account in your household. Like your husband or your kid or whoever in your household. And then you're encouraged to purchase on those accounts because you get commission and you can hit your ranks. It's very insidious and it's very, very scammy. LuLaRich didn't have that sort of thing, but 100% we were definitely purchasing things to hit rank, hit your bonus. The way that it was in LuLaRich, because it was a pyramid scheme, was that you would get your bonuses based on how much you purchased. So you would encourage people to purchase, but not sell. It didn't matter if I sold anything because when I purchased it from LuLaRich, they already got their money.
Yep.
And then I hit my ranks because I'm purchasing all these things and then I'm getting money based on these bonuses. And it got to the point where like sometimes people would be like, I didn't hit my numbers this month, but I've got this like $50,000 bonus. I mean, this is not me. I never had a bonus that big, but this $50,000 bonus. And they would just buy the, $2,000-$3,000 worth of inventory that they needed to buy to hit that bonus, because buying $3,000 worth of stuff is better than losing $50,000 bonus.
Yep.
So then people had these huge LuLaRich boutiques where they had these huge warehouses and they're like, we've got these huge warehouse sales. And I mean, it's insane the amount of clothes that people were purchasing in order to stay active in the pyramid in LuLaRich. I didn't even notice it. It was such a cluster. Like I didn't even notice it until it slowed down enough that I could breathe and actually start asking questions. And at that point, when my answers weren't being answered, was when I was like, okay, something's going on here.
You have probably heard of promo swaps with other podcasters, but have you heard of feed drops? Feed drops are when one podcaster plays an entire episode of another podcast. The idea is for the listeners of the show to experience an entire episode before they decide if they want to subscribe. I'm going to tell you what, this is way more effective than promo swaps, and I have the perfect person that can do this for you. My good friend Greg at Indie Drop-In Network. Indie Drop-In Network is a network built around feed drops. You submit an episode, and if approved, it appears on one of Indie Drop-In's shows with all your contact details in front of established audience. Best of all, it's free. So, if you are a true crime, paranormal, scary, or comedy podcaster looking to find new listeners, consider doing this. I've done it and I can tell you it does work. What the hell are you waiting for? I should probably tell you how to do it. Maybe that's what you're waiting for. Go to indiedropin.com/creators. I'll say it again. Go to indiedropin.com/creators. You're damn right. Dang, that felt good. With any sort of pyramid scheme, what happens is, and I'll let you speak to the recruiting piece of it, there is not everybody is like Roberta, right? There's a bunch of people at the bottom of the pyramid always, but not all of them are able to level up to that next part of the pyramid. It didn't happen to you. It could have happened to you. It could happen to anybody. It does happen to the majority.
Absolutely.
You just don't know that. So I'll let you explain that recruiting process and how eventually, when other things came into play, it caught up. But at the bottom of the pyramid, there are people all along that are getting reamed, I guess you could put it.
Yeah, we like to call those people the last ones in. They're the last ones in the scheme. They will never have anybody underneath them. They will never make any money off any kind of downline. They will never make a bonus because they don't have anybody underneath them. They will always lose. The last ones will always lose. And the bottom of the pyramid is where the majority of people are, unfortunately. 99.7% of people, when all is said and done, and you factor in all of your time, cost, energy, 99.7% of people lose money in multi-level marketing. Gambling is only 95%. So you have a better chance of taking it to the slot machine and betting it all on hoping to get those double sevens or whatever the hell it is. I don't gamble. So it's like my gambling analogy doesn't work because I don't understand how it works. It's a mathematically impossible fallacy that's like based on a utopian idea. It's the most obnoxious, ridiculous thing ever. Mathematically, it can't work. So if I tell you, Jeff, you're going to join my team, and the only thing that you need to do is just get 5 people to join and then teach those 5 people how to get 5 people. It's so easy, Jeff. You have to know at least 5 people. I mean, who doesn't know 5 people? So you just have to get 5 people and then teach those people to figure out the 5 people to teach the 5 people the 5 people. It's so easy. Who doesn't know 5 people? But at this rate of exponential growth, When we hit the 13th line of successful teaching 5 people to get 5 people in the pyramid, we now have run out of people on Earth. We are now exceeding the human population on Earth.
Yeah.
It's not unlimited. Nothing's unlimited. Sorry, not even breadsticks. Olive Garden will eventually say, it's time for you to go. I did an example of a pyramid scheme that goes around the time of year in the holidays called Secret Sister. And Secret Sister, you'll see on your Facebook feeds where it's like, hey, moms, or whoever, it's usually moms. Hey, moms, don't you want to get something for yourself this holiday? Let's do this fun Secret Sister gift. You are going to take the name on the top of this list and you're going to send them a $10 gift. And then you're going to put your name on the list and send it off like a typical chain letter, like we always see. And then you will eventually get 36 items in the mail from your 36 Secret Sisters because you send it off to 6 friends and they send it off to 6 friends and you get 36 gifts. Isn't that incredible? That never works because if I were to buy one gift and then receive 36 gifts, there are 36 women out there that are not going to receive a gift at all because they put in a gift and I got their gift. Mm-hmm. And there's no one else exchanging their gift for them. You can't put in one and expect to get out 36 if no one else is putting in an additional 35 to cover it.
Yeah.
And no one is. They're all only putting in one. So then all of those people have to fail.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's never actually about the exchange of goods and the services that you're selling.
No.
Fast forwarding here, things start to fall apart in other ways for LuLaRich also because the growth is so substantial. I don't want to say it was never because that's not fair for me to say. It became a certain point in time where it was not at all about the goods and services you're selling anymore. And then there's a fallout on the quality control. And on top of running out of people to sign up, you start to see that, hell, we're not actually selling good stuff. And we don't have any more people at the bottom of the pyramid. And things start to fall apart for them.
Yeah. The quality control issues for me started in 2016, only a few months after I had joined. It was in the summer of 2016. We had gotten so much exponential growth and I got these leggings that stunk like so bad. They were so bad. In LuLaRich, I call them dead fart leggings, but I've also called them poop in a wet bathing suit. And that's literally, I mean, it really smelled like rotting and chlorine, like death and chemicals. It was really bad. And I reached out to LuLaRich and I was like, I can't sell these. Like, this is not okay. Why are they so stinky? And they basically told me that they needed to see photos of the damage to give me a refund. And I let them know again, you know, like, I don't know how to take pictures of stink. They stink. You know, like if you could just refund me or like send me something new, like I don't really care. Like I just can't sell these and I'm not going to sell them and you need to make it right. They told me that I could wash them in vinegar. I could hang them out to air them out. I could put them in the freezer. All of these things should help with the smell. Yeah, I thought those were all like really ridiculous things. I didn't do any of them. I sealed them up in a package and I set them aside. I put them in like the back of my boutique and was like, I'll worry about these later. It happened again, not with stinky, but like with wet. I got wet stuff. I got stuff that had holes in it. I had stuff that had sun bleach. I kept the damages the best that I could and just went on with my day because LuLaRich would say like, oh, well, Roberta, like focusing on that is not an income producing activity. And we don't want you to focus your time on things that aren't making you money. And, you know, complaining about defects doesn't make you any money.
Because selling them wasn't making people the most money either.
Right. So just shut up and buy another box. And so basically that's what it was. It was always this like hush hush. I started asking a lot of questions and they started love bombing me with trips and trinkets, recognition, things like that. I got to speak on like a webinar and I got to teach on the webinar, which was like a big deal in LuLaRich. I got to go on the cruise. I didn't earn it. I was gifted it. I got to like extra tickets to go have all my team like up front and center for Katy Perry, like little things like that. When I would ask too many questions and be like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. Here's something, you know, to take your mind off of it. Lots of love bombing, lots of trinkets. And eventually, like even the trinkets weren't enough to get me to forget about what was happening. I'd be like, no, you didn't answer my question. I wasn't getting the answers to the questions that I needed like inside the organization. And I just was like, I'm just going to look outside the organization. And I started reading news articles, and I was asked by my MLM to spy and to gather information. They probably shouldn't have asked me because it didn't help me wanting to stay in. I think maybe they thought they were giving me a job to make me feel special. But what it really did was it showed me the truth. Because even though a lot of those accounts were really outlandish and I thought there's no way this could be true, there were a few that had happened to me. And so my cognitive dissonance was like on high alert. And it was like, wait a second, like this is true. Like maybe the other stuff's true too. I had to slowly work my way out of it. And I did. I did. I slowly worked my way out of it. But it was hard and it takes time. And don't fault people that need time leaving these groups because it is a very personal journey for everybody, but I knew when enough was enough for me. And it didn't matter what LuLaRich would try to paint themselves to be. In my mind, I knew what they really were because I had experienced it firsthand. I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I think that like the quality issues are often always there, but like you said, who's actually buying it? A lot of the majority of it can be from the people's, or from you guys. So it's less likely
absolutely.
to report it. But the people that are reporting it are probably the people that are just actually buying it, not selling it. But then when you start to have more people selling it, once it starts to catch wind, you start to see more and more complaints. And it's from you guys selling it. And that's actually what started to make a difference. You guys got together as a community, you guys selling it, having all these issues that you're seeing with it. And it all kind of tied in together. Before we segue to the big, because you do have a podcast because of all this.
Yeah.
What would you say all your losses were if you had to quickly sum them up? Not only financially, but emotionally, socially, as you just talked about. Everything's tied up into this. We're going to obviously segue into how this inspired you to start a podcast. But you took a huge, devastating blow because of LuLaRich.
You know, I have about $5,000 left in credit card debt. I wasn't financially hit nearly as hard as most people.
What are some good examples? I mean,
there were some people. A friend of mine, she lost her house, she lost her car, she lost her family, she lost her husband. I know people that just, they got divorced because of it. One of my friends almost lost her house. I talked to a lot of victims that lose substantially more. It's sad. It's really sad.
The people you love and care about, too.
There are devastating losses on MLM. I lost a lot of friends. That was really hard for me. Luckily, most of the people that I lost have also left and I've gotten them back. And I've gained so many more friends on this side of the advocacy and speaking out than I ever had. And so much truer, better, like more real friends than I ever had in MLM. Because it's not real. It's all fake. It's fake feminism. It's fake sisterhood. It's fake friendship. It's a fake business. It's all fake. MLM's core competency is deception. I started speaking out publicly within a couple months after leaving LuLaRich, and I educated myself about MLM. In fact, this is a good segue. I went and I looked at the very first podcast interview that I ever had, like that I ever did as a guest. And it was a podcast called Sounds Like MLM But Okay. And the episode's called The Rise and Fall of LuLaRich Part 1. And it was the very first interview, like a speaking interview I'd ever done. Everything I had done before then had been like written or had been like my own advocacy on social media. It's interesting to hear me then and to hear me now because I was only 6 months-ish out of MLM. I didn't understand all of the deepness of MLM. I didn't understand like the systemic process of MLM and how it works and how it's tied to the government and how like there's just so many things. I didn't know any of that. This was before The Dream came out. In fact, I listened to The Dream podcast while I filmed the Vice documentary. So I'm filming the Vice documentary, about to do my first expose on LuLaRich, and I'm learning about the governmental connection to MLM, like right before I go on camera. So for me, it was like I was still learning when I did those really early things. And so there's a lot of these, like, we call them like small T traumas in multi-level marketing that really changed who I was as a person and who I wanted to be going forward after experiencing this trauma and seeing how it affected me and how it affected the people that I love and moving forward and saying, we need to talk about the victims of these scams because I hear all the time, it's like, oh, well, she's a dumbass. She deserves it. Like she joined a pyramid scheme. What did she expect? Like, I want to let people know not everybody knows what a pyramid scheme is. Not everybody is as educated as you. Not everybody is as woke as you. Not everybody has had the experiences and the advantages that you have had to know these things intrinsically. And I see it all the time. I talk to victims all the time. They're educated. They're men. They're women. They're every race. They're every shape and size and color that you can come in. It is incredibly diverse. And the only commonality is that they got scammed because they were vulnerable. And it's really sad to me that people will shame those that are vulnerable and get scammed by being like, well, you deserved it because you're stupid. And so when I would see that, I was like, no, these people are victims. And I really made it my job. And it did end up becoming my job, but I made it a point to make it my mission to educate people about what MLMs are and how they chew them up, spit them out, and leave them in such a state of shame that they don't even want to talk about it. It's kind of how it started, I guess. And we started this anti-MLM community, and I met a lot of other women that had been scammed, and we started educating each other and educating the public. And we all sort of have an expertise. I mean, mine's LuLaRich, but we all have our own MLM expertise, and we share, and we've created this incredible community. And then I decided to start a podcast. I had been a co-host. I had done so many podcasts, and I had been a co-host of another podcast previously that had ended, and I really missed it. And I said, I want to start a podcast. I think there's a voice that's missing from this movement, and I think it's the victims, and I think we need to hear from the victims.
It is an emotional thing because not only do you feel bad about yourself, there's an attachment. They went after 5 of your closest people.
I was going to say, that's why these scams are so insidious, right? You talk about other scams where people call you up and they're like, I'm going to turn your power off if you don't give me a Best Buy card in 10 minutes. Those ones are very glaringly obvious to most people that that's a scam, or the IRS is like, you better watch out. We're on our way. Come on. Those are pretty glaringly obvious to most people. But when your grandma comes to you and says, dear, I've got some great essential oils I think you would love, it doesn't look like somebody trying to scam you. It looks like your grandma, because it is your grandma.
Yep.
Or it looks like your best friend, or it looks like your boss, or it looks like the pastor's wife at your church. It never, ever, ever looks like a man in a traveling wagon selling snake oil out the back. It doesn't ever look like that. That's what it is, but it doesn't look like that.
Because they don't know they're doing it.
They don't know they're doing it. In MLM, the victims are also the perpetrators. Anyway, continue.
On this podcast, we talk about community a lot, and you were talking about how you've been a part of and helped build and develop this community. What are some other ways you've reached out to people that were victims and kind of built this community?
So, like I said, it wasn't until this year that I decided to start my podcast.
Hey, listener, are you a podcaster or content creator? Well, you've got to hear this. I'm going to talk to you about Riverside.fm. I use Riverside to record all my interviews for this podcast. I absolutely love it. Super simple to use, and I get the audio quality of an actual recording studio. You can have video resolution up to 4K, uncompressed crystal clear audio, and continuous file uploading throughout your recording. I've used a lot of different things to record this podcast, and I'll be honest with you, some of them were just way more complicated than they needed to be. That will not be an issue with Riverside FM. It is super simple, and with that, you still have the quality audio, which is very critical. The support team is great and always available to assist you with any questions that you may have. Damn it, I'm serious when I say this. Riverside FM is the ultimate great recording solution for podcasters and content creators. Go online right now and check it out. You can do a free trial and give it a shot. I guarantee afterwards you will be so happy with it. You'll be looking through all the different packages and you will find one that meets your needs. Legitimize the content you are recording and creating. Go to riverside.fm right now to get started.
Because I knew, I had so many friends that were victims, and we told each other our stories, and I had done the Vice documentary. And at this point, when I started my podcast, I had already filmed LuLaRich. So I knew that was coming out. I just didn't know when. And I knew that in LuLaRich, I had spoken a lot about the cult aspect. and the fake sisterhood and all of the things about the victimization and the cult aspect that I wanted to talk about on my podcast anyway. And so I thought, you know what, like, it's time. Like, you're either going to start this podcast that you've been talking about for years or you're not. And I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't. And I downloaded the Anchor app. And on Valentine's Day, because I was going through a divorce, with my very first Valentine's Day in a very long time alone, I sat down and I recorded my first episode, which was my story of the bare bones of LuLaRich and why I decided to start my podcast and why I thought that there was a voice missing in the anti-MLM community and that that this was my answer to that. Because again, like, people heard my story and so many people resonated with it. And I got so many messages from people reaching out saying, I'm in Young Living and I saw the Vice documentary and like, you're right, they're cults or it's the same. I had so many people reach out to me in between the two documentaries. I was just like, people need to hear other people. Like, they don't need to hear my story again. Like, I want to help other people's stories be told. Like, let's tell other people's stories. My story is not mutually exclusive to MLM. Like, I am a drop in the bucket. I just happened to be speaking out against a company that was in the media when nobody else really was. Like, that's the only thing that made me quote unquote special. I reached out to those people that had reached out to me saying, thank you for helping me. Thank you for changing my life. Thank you for pointing this out. Thank you for being the common link. And I said, look, I know I've talked about this, but I think I'm going to start that podcast. Would you be on the show? And I got like 20 people that were like, I will talk to you in the very beginning. And I reached out to probably most of them. There was a lot of LuLaRich people, and I really didn't want to be a LuLaRich podcast. And so I only reached out to a couple of LuLaRich people. And I said, let's tell your stories. And we started telling stories. And then more people reached out. And the podcast just started growing. And I was just posting like a story every Sunday when I could get around to it, sharing a story of my friends. I'd be like, hey, can you come on the show and let's talk about your MLM story? I never really wanted to be super prepared because I really like hearing people's story and like the genuine surprise and shock in my voice is real. I like to do an outline, but I don't like to do a script because when you're less prepared, what I think you get a lot of really great tangential conversations that sort of like offshoot and you end up talking about things that would have never been on my list or script ever to begin with. And we get a lot of really great stories that way. It's so fun. And everybody comes off the show and they say, as soon as I hit like end recording, they all say that was so much fun. That was so therapeutic. That was so cathartic. That was so much better than I thought it was going to be. Thank you so much. Like, I literally just felt like I got out of a therapy session. I remember when I filmed LuLaRich and when I filmed the Vice documentary and just being able to sit down and have someone ask me a question that genuinely cared and be able to answer it and know that they actually cared about the answer. Like, it made me feel so good because there wasn't really anybody before then that had really cared. And so that feeling that I got, like, I knew that other people that had been stuck in MLMs needed to feel it too. You can connect with every single story because everybody is just really real. As you listen to these, you go, oh my God, I could have gotten scammed by this MLM. Like, I am David or I am Megan or whoever it is. And you're just like, this could be me.
I can tell you're very...
I felt like... Continue, I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say, I can tell you're very passionate about it, and that's what makes the podcast awesome.
Yeah, the podcast saved my life in a way. You know, I was lost. My husband and I decided after a year almost separated that we did decide to want to get divorced. We're great friends. We're just not great husband and wife. Like, we just want different things, I guess, is the easiest way to say. And it was really tough. It's really tough. Even when you're platonic and you're working together, going through a divorce, it's still really tough because you have to process through all of these emotions. And I needed something to take my mind off of it. And so I started the podcast. And we created such a beautiful safe space for victims in MLM by talking about these systemic issues and how pretty much everybody's a victim because if 99.7% of people fail, that's succeeding. So we're all victims and let's like take it back. Let's embrace it. And so many people resonated with that message and decided, you know what? Hey, I want to do anti-MLM content too. And now there is this incredible sweeping movement of these brilliant, beautiful, hilarious educated anti-MLM advocates out there right now who are creating incredibly beautiful infotainment and easily consumable content that's not only like fun and funny to watch, but it's like, yes, this is exactly what MLMs are doing. It's brilliant. I'm so proud of everyone in the anti-MLM community. It's not just one person. I mean, we've got people that are in MLMs that follow us because they know they can ask questions and not be ridiculed. And their cognitive dissonance is going, wait a second, we can ask questions. And then they're asking questions and they're getting their questions answered in a compassionate way. And they're like, okay, but I don't understand this. And instead of being like, well, you're stupid and shutting them off, we're saying, okay, let us break this down for you. Like, this is really simple, follow along. And they're going, oh my gosh, I'm losing money. And you're like, yeah, see? And we're able to help people. You don't need to make people feel bad about themselves to get your point across that MLMs suck. You can compassionately be like, babe, MLMs suck. Let me show you why. And now you've got another person on our anti-MLM pyramid that's going to be helping 5 more people and educating 5 more people about why MLMs are bad. And within 13 successful levels, we'll have told everyone in the whole world how bad MLMs are. I mean, let's just use their own scam and use it for good.
F MLMs and f all the doubters, right? That's a lovely, beautiful story you have there.
So through my podcast, I not only get to help women like that, which changed my life, through some nasty comments, which I try not to read anymore, but through some nasty comments, I realized that I talk a lot. And I thought, that's weird. I talk a lot. I have a talk show. I don't understand why you're complaining. And then it was like, you interrupt your guests. And I was like, oh, I should stay on mute. And then I started looking into it. And then I was like, oh my God, like I do all these things, which then led me on the path to, at 40 years old, being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. So my podcast like led me to even that diagnosis of, hey, there's a reason you talk a lot and interrupt your guests. I was voted most talkative in the 8th grade. The entire 8th grade class knew I had ADHD before I did. And that's okay. Like, it took me a few more years to figure it out, but I got here. And even going through like my divorce journey and my ADHD discovery journey, like I talk about that on the podcast a little bit. And it's also led a lot of other people to reach out to me and say, hey, you know what? You talk a lot. I talk a lot. You interrupt. I interrupt. I love your interviews because you do that. I went to the doctor and I also have ADHD. So thank you so much for like being that person that made me go, wait a second, maybe I also have this. And so many other people because of that have also like, it's this crazy domino effect. It's changed my life. If you would have asked me in February, if I thought this is where I would be in December, I would have been like, you're insane. 2021, I put my nose to the grindstone and here I am.
There's a lot of podcasters that listen to this. What are some of the struggles you went through from the podcaster standpoint, especially in the beginning? I mean, and right now, right before this talk, right before we hit the record button, we were talking about different things we could do to improve things in podcasting in general. So, I mean, what are some of the struggles you had?
Yeah. So literally when I joke and say I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm not joking. I'm really not. I really have no idea what I'm doing. And that's okay. It's okay to be okay. And it's okay to be excited for little tiny milestones. Like get excited for the first 100 downloads, get excited for the first 100 followers, get excited for the first 100 shares, like get excited for those things. It's important to celebrate the little milestones. This was something that we talked about on my podcast. I think the episode came out today. We talk about, instead of doing like vision boards, you do results boards. And so like, this was something that's really good, right? So instead of being like, you know, I haven't hit that million yet, or I don't have enough money to buy the new car, or the things on my vision board, like I feel like I'll never achieve them. Like you're just setting yourself up for failure. So you don't need to put a Lambo on there. What you need to do is when you hit that 100 follower, you screenshot it, you print it up and you put it on your results board. And you look and you're like, I have 100 followers. That's incredible. And you go on from there. You have to celebrate those little ones because podcasting is so hard. It takes up so much time and energy. When you think about what it takes to do an episode, from like figuring out who you're going to talk to or what you're going to talk about, setting all that up, actually doing the interview, then sitting down, editing it, having to go back through, double check that you didn't miss something, and then doing your show notes, all of this stuff, like there's so much. I just celebrate every little thing. And I never looked at the numbers as opposed, like it was not a daily thing. It was just like every month I would take a screenshot so that I could see how much it was growing and enjoying every single achievement along the way and being better every day. Like, I know that I talk over my guests. So I just learned how to use mute. I was like, oh, I didn't even know I could do this. I know that like sometimes my stuff is tangential. So I now have an outline so that when we get off track, I can make a note and try to circle back. And then I can edit a lot of it out in post if I need to. I also was in the beginning was really like worried about making sure everything was written down so that I could go through like a script or an outline so I wouldn't forget anything. And when I would listen back, I'm like, I sound so robotic. So now what I do is I just sort of make little notes for myself. And when I talk, I try to be very conversational, the way that I would talk to anybody. And I just try to hit on my notes as opposed to sounding like I'm reading from a script.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the script thing. It feels disingenuous to me.
Same here.
If people do that, that's great. And 100%, like if that works for you, my brain is like, nope.
It doesn't work for Jeff either.
I'm so, I mean, it's hard. Acknowledge that it's hard. Take time off if you need to. Take breaks, do seasons, take time off. I experienced a lot of burnout in the summer and my brain was like, we're taking a month off. And I don't even think I told anybody. I just stopped making content. My followers after a couple of weeks were like, are you coming back? I was like, I just needed a break. And I eventually like had to be like, I'm sorry, guys. I probably should have told everybody, but my executive dysfunction went on vacation. It's okay to take breaks. It's okay to have mental days for yourself. It's okay to be like, I'm putting out a lot of content. I need to take a step back. And it's okay to try new things. You can try a new format and be like, hey, did you guys like the way I did that? And here's the other thing, like my followers are so involved in who we talk to, what we talk about, the scams, like what companies we want to focus on, like what news stories we want to cover. They're so involved. And I really love that too, because again, it's like a community. So it's like, for me, it's like a podcast is like a radio show for like a very specific niche of people. And if those are the people that listen, like we really should care what they want to hear. So always trying new formats and saying, did you guys like that? Improving on things, adding things in, and not being afraid, which is my goal for 2022 and what Jeff and I were talking about earlier, not being afraid of being like, hey, I admire you. Can you help me? Like, I like the way you do this. Can you just like show me? Can we hop on a Zoom and just help me out and tell me how you do that? Because again, like I'm telling you, I literally have no idea what I'm doing. And every day I just try to be a little bit better than I was the day before. And it seems to be working for me so far. So I'm just going to keep doing that.
That's part of it. And you have a lot of people that are really knowledgeable about podcasting and they try to like give too much advice. Like should be something that you're passionate about, like you're talking about, like what I do. I like sharing that information. I like sharing your story with people because it's a different experience for everybody.
And then when my podcast gets better quality wise and everybody's like, oh my God, it sounds amazing. And I was like, right? Because the content's already there. You don't need to focus on being the best of the best of the best in anything other than being the best in what you talk about. You know, for me, I'm always educating myself. I'm very immersed in the anti-MLM community. I'm working on the back end with lawsuits. I'm working with producers and you know, doing TV shows and things on the back end as well, helping connect people. So I'm very, very connected. So for me, like this podcast, it's my passion and you can hear it. Like even when I do interviews like this, like you were saying, like you can really hear that this is something that I'm really passionate about. And that will come out. So if you're listening and you're like, I really want to start a podcast, but like, I don't know, like, what would I talk about? Like, here's a great example. Think about the thing that you talk about all the time that all of your friends are like, shut up. That's what you should start your podcast about because your friends don't want to hear it, but everybody on the internet does. And if there's somebody out there that wants to hear about your whatever collection or your obsession with a certain TV show or whatever it is that you are just like so over the moon about. And it's not your friends. Unfortunately, a couple of my friends listen to my podcast, but admittedly, most of them are like, I'm sorry, I just don't have time. And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's the best advice I could give right there.
You go through went through the same struggles as anybody else, regardless of Amazon Prime's documentary coming out, right?
Absolutely. And I will say, like, before LuLaRich, my podcast numbers were, I had already hit half a mil before LuLaRich had happened. I've surpassed that. I think we're at like 1.2 now on total. I did what I had done from February to like September when LuLaRich came out. I've now done.
Yeah.
And then in addition to in the last like 2.5 months. So yes, I was in a movie, and that is a large factor in the jump in numbers, 100%. But I did have a pretty good following and established community previous. We just basically cast a really big net and was like, hey, if you're interested, we're over here. And people are like, oh, we're interested.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So yeah, I mean, it can happen to anybody.
Like I said, you're going through the same struggles as somebody with 10 downloads, with 20,000.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're going through the same things.
There's struggle. There's, am I making good enough content? There's imposter syndrome every second of my life. I literally will post the podcast and then be like, I will sit and wait for the first hate comment. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to be like, this was the worst episode you ever did. And then everyone's going to be like, I agree. It still hasn't happened yet, but I still feel that way every single morning when a podcast like comes out. I'm still waiting for somebody to be like, that was my least favorite episode. And for everybody to sort of chime in. Definitely don't feel alone when you feel those imposter syndrome feelings and the pod fade and all of that. Like it's all there. It's just part of it, but it's such a wonderful thing. And it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And probably some of the coolest things have ever happened to me have come out of this podcast. So if you love it, you just do it anyway.
Beautiful. And it's an amazing story. Well, I'm going to see how great of a promotional pitch you can have here. Tell everybody where to find your stuff, where to listen to your podcast and all that. Let's see what you got.
Okay. So you can find me on social media. I'm pretty easy to find. I have a website, robertablevins.com. I'm still updating it, but that's going to have all of the landing information. I'm on TikTok. We're having a good time over there. If you TikTok at Berta Like Whoa, WHOA. I'm also on Twitter as Berta Like Whoa and on Instagram as The Real Roberta Blevins. And you can find the podcast where you listen to podcasts. I think I'm pretty much everywhere. It's called Life After MLM. And you can also find the podcast on Instagram. We're doing lots of fun giveaways and things throughout the month of December. And we're going to continue that into 2022. So if you are interested, you can find us at Life After MLM Podcast on Instagram.
That was a great job. And of course, all that will be in the show notes. Everybody can check it out. Seriously, though, thanks for taking the time to have this conversation with me. I really do appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jeff. And if anybody wants to ever talk podcast, hit me up on Twitter and I'll try to impart some knowledge. But again, it's like the blind leading the blind. So maybe you can help me. Maybe we can help each other. That's an ideal situation.
For sure. Hey, and you and I will definitely keep in touch. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening and thanks for telling a friend. But more importantly, thank you for supporting independent content creators. I hope you enjoyed this episode and continue to listen to the upcoming ones. I'm really trying to do something special here by highlighting all the amazing things all these amazing content creators are doing. I hope you continue to join me on my journey. I'm Jeff, aka Podcast Father, the Indie Podcaster. Keep being you, keep being great.